They whispered she was hideous, a bride so unwanted her own uncle paid a billionaire to take her. Julian Hayes agreed to the arrangement site unseen, desperate to save his crumbling empire. But when he lifted that heavy veil in front of 200 guests, his hands froze, his breath caught, and 3 words escaped his lips that would change everything. You're beautiful. Welcome back, my beautiful family. Before we begin, please click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. The morning of Nia Carter's wedding day began with rain. She stood at the window of the bridal suite in the Grand Meridian Hotel, watching water streak down the glass in rivulets that blurred the Chicago skyline into watercolor smudges of gray and silver. Behind her, a team of stylists fussed over her dress, their voices a distant hum she couldn't quite focus on. Her reflection in the window showed a woman in white lace, but Nia barely recognized herself. 24 years old, and she was marrying a man she'd never met. "Miss Carter, we need to finish your hair," one of the stylists said, her tone gentle but insistent. Nia turned from the window, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. The wedding dress her Uncle Gerald had chosen hung on her frame like an accusation. Expensive, white, traditional, and entirely not her choice. Nothing about today was her choice. Not the dress, not the venue, not the groom waiting somewhere in this massive hotel to marry her for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with money. "Of course," Nia murmured, settling into the chair before the vanity mirror. The lead stylist, a woman named Monica with kind eyes and efficient hands, began pinning Nia's natural curls into an elegant updo. Nia watched her own face in the mirror, brown skin that Gerald always said was too dark, full lips he called too big, a nose he claimed was too wide. For 24 years, her uncle had cataloged her supposed flaws with the precision of an accountant tallying debts. "You're lucky anyone would take you," he'd said 2 months ago when he announced the arrangement. "Julian Hayes is desperate for this merger, or he'd never agree to marry someone like you." Someone like you. The words had carved themselves into Nia's heart. "You're a beautiful bone structure," Monica said, meeting Nia's eyes in the mirror. "Your husband is a lucky man." Nia managed a weak smile. "Thank you. But luck had nothing to do with it. This was business." Julian Hayes needed the Carter family's connections to save Hayes Industries from bankruptcy. Gerald needed Hayes' name and reputation to legitimize his own shady business dealings. And Nia? She was simply the transaction fee, the unwanted niece Gerald could finally get rid of while calling it generosity. A knock at the door made everyone freeze. "Come in," Nia called, her voice steadier than she felt. Gerald Carter entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He was a large man, 53 years old, with a face that had probably been handsome once, but had curdled into something cruel. His expensive suit couldn't hide the meanness in his eyes as they swept over Nia. "Ladies, give us a moment," he said. The stylist exchanged glances but filed out quickly. Monica squeezed Nia's shoulder as she passed, a small gesture of solidarity that brought unexpected tears to Nia's eyes. When the door clicked shut, Gerald's false smile vanished. "Don't embarrass me today," he said flatly. "Hayes is getting a raw deal as it is. The least you can do is keep your mouth shut and look grateful." Nia's hands clenched in her lap. 24 years of this. 24 years of being told she was worthless, ugly, a burden. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 6, and Gerald, her father's brother, had taken her in not out of love but obligation. He'd made sure she knew it every single day since. "I understand," Nia whispered, because what else could she say? "Do you?" Gerald stepped closer, his cologne overwhelming. "Julian Hayes has never seen your face. I made sure of that. Told him you were shy, scarred from an accident. Whatever kept him from asking questions. But he's expecting someone he can keep hidden away, someone who won't cause trouble. That's the only reason he agreed." Each word was a knife, but Nia had learned long ago how to bleed quietly. "He doesn't know," she said. "It wasn't a question." "Doesn't know what? That you're actually just plain instead of hideous? That I may have exaggerated certain details?" Gerald shrugged. "What does it matter?" By the time he sees your face, you'll be married. He's too much of a gentleman to cause a scene, and he needs this merger too badly to back out. Nia looked at her uncle, really looked at him, and felt something shift inside her chest. Fear, yes, but underneath it, something else. Something that felt almost like anger. Why do you hate me so much? The question escaped before she could stop it. Gerald's face darkened. Hate you? I fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head for 18 years. Show some gratitude. You reminded me every day that I'm a burden, that I'm ugly, that no one would ever want me. Because it's true. Gerald leaned down, his face inches from hers. Your parents left you with nothing but debt and medical bills. I could have put you in foster care, but I didn't. And this is how you repay me? By questioning my generosity on the day I'm finally getting you off my hands. The door opened again, and Monica poked her head in. Mr. Carter, the ceremony begins in 20 minutes. Gerald straightened, his pleasant mask sliding back into place. Of course. I was just giving my niece some final advice. He looked at Nia one last time. Remember what I said. Keep quiet, look grateful, and for God's sake, keep that veil on as long as possible. Let him get used to the idea of you before he has to actually look at you. Then he was gone, leaving Nia alone with the scent of his cologne and the weight of his cruelty. Monica and the other stylists returned, and Nia submitted to their ministrations numbly. They finished her hair, touched up her minimal makeup, and finally brought out the veil, a heavy, ornate thing that fell to her waist and obscured her face completely. It felt like a shroud. You look like a princess, one of the younger stylists breathed. Nia looked in the mirror and saw a ghost. The Grand Meridian's chapel was a study in understated elegance. High ceilings, warm with pews and flowers everywhere. White roses, orchids, and peonies filled every available surface, their fragrance heavy in the air. 200 guests filled the pews, though Nia knew none of them were there for her. These were business associates, society figures, people who came to see Julian Hayes marry Gerald Carter's mysterious niece. She heard them whispering as she stood in the vestibule, waiting for her cue. Have you seen her face? No, but I heard she was badly scarred in an accident. Gerald Carter said she was shy, but my wife heard she's hideous. Poor Julian. Desperate times, I suppose. Each word landed like a stone, but Nia kept her chin up. She'd survived 24 years of Gerald's abuse. She could survive one wedding ceremony. The wedding march began. Gerald offered his arm, and Nia took it because she had no choice. They began the long walk down the aisle, and Nia focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Through the heavy veil, she could barely make out the faces of the guests, but she felt their eyes on her, judging, pitying, curious. And then she saw him. Julian Hayes stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair styled back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He was handsome, breathtakingly so, in that way wealthy, powerful men often were. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Blue-gray, like a winter sky, and filled with something she couldn't quite read. Resignation, maybe, or regret. This was the man she was about to marry. A stranger who thought he was getting damaged goods. A billionaire who'd agreed to this farce to save his company. They reached the altar. Gerald placed Nia's hand in Julian's and stepped back without a word of blessing or encouragement. Julian's hand was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. Nia risked a glance up at his face, though she knew he could see nothing of hers through the veil. He looked nervous. That surprised her. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice sonorous and practiced. Nia heard the words, "Dearly beloved, gathered here today, sacred union," but they felt hollow. There was nothing sacred about this. It was a business transaction dressed up in white lace and flowers. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence stretched. Nia held her breath, half hoping someone would object, would save her from this fate. But no one did. Of course no one did. The ceremony continued. Vows were recited, traditional, impersonal vows that Julian delivered in a deep, steady voice and Nia echoed in a whisper. Rings were exchanged, A simple gold band for him, a delicate diamond-studded one for her. And then came the moment she'd been dreading. "You may now kiss the bride." Julian turned to her fully, and his hands rose to lift her veil. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment he would see her face and realize that while Gerald had lied about many things, he'd been right about one. She wasn't what anyone wanted. The veil lifted. Julian froze. His hands stilled in the air, still holding the delicate fabric. His eyes widened. His lips parted. And for a long moment, a moment that felt like forever, he simply stared at her. Nia waited for the disappointment, the dismay, the regret to flood his features. But instead, she saw shock. Genuine, total shock. "You're beautiful," he whispered. The words were so quiet only she could hear them, but they detonated in her chest like a bomb. Around them, the guests murmured in surprise. She heard it rippling to the pews, gasps, whispers, exclamations of confusion. "She's gorgeous." What was Gerald talking about? "I don't understand." But Nia couldn't focus on them. She could only stare at Julian, at the wonder in his eyes, at the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and unexpected. She didn't know what to say. Julian seemed to shake himself. His hands cupped her face gently, and then he was kissing her. Softly, carefully, like she was something fragile that might break. It was her first kiss. Her first kiss, in front of 200 strangers, with a man she didn't know, and it tasted like confusion and possibility and fear all mixed together. When he pulled back, he was still staring at her. "I'm sorry," he murmured, though she didn't know what he was apologizing for. The officiant cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Julian Hayes." Applause erupted, but it felt distant. Nia was caught in Julian's gaze, an impossible gentleness she saw there, in the way his thumb brushed across her cheekbone like he couldn't quite believe she was real. They turned to walk back down the aisle together, and Nia caught sight of Gerald's face in the front row. He looked furious, absolutely livid, and she realized with a jolt of understanding that her uncle had wanted Julian to be disappointed, had wanted her to be rejected, humiliated, confirmed in all her worst beliefs about herself. But Julian's hand tightened on hers, steady and sure, and for the first time in her life, Nia wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd been lied to about more than just this wedding. The reception was held in the Grand Meridian's ballroom, a cavernous space dripping with crystal chandeliers and gold accents that spoke of old money and older traditions. Nia sat at the head table beside Julian, acutely aware of every eye in the room fixed on her. The whispers had only grown louder since the ceremony. Did Gerald lie about her? "She's stunning." Why would he say those things? Maybe you want to keep her hidden. You know how controlling he is. Nia kept her gaze on her untouched plate of salmon and asparagus, her hands folded in her lap beneath the white tablecloth. Beside her, Julian was fielding congratulations from a steady stream of well-wishers, his public smile firmly in place. But every few minutes, she felt his eyes on her, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You should eat something," he said quietly during a brief lull. "It's going to be a long night." Nia looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since the ceremony. Up close, Julian Hayes was even more striking than she'd realized. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, those impossibly blue-gray eyes that seemed to see too much. He had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, which he supposed it probably had been. Everything about him screamed wealth, power, and control. Everything except the way he was looking at her right now, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "I'm not very hungry," she admitted. "Nervous?" His voice was surprisingly gentle. "Wouldn't you be?" The words came out sharper than she intended, and she immediately regretted them. Gerald's voice echoed in her head. "Don't embarrass me. Keep your mouth shut." But Julian didn't look offended. If anything, his expression softened. "Yes," he said simply. "I would be. I am." That surprised her. "You are." "I just married a woman I've never met, based on the word of a man I now realize is a liar." Julian's jaw tightened. "Your uncle told me you were difficult to look at, that you'd been in an accident that left you scarred, that you preferred to stay hidden away." Nia's throat constricted. And instead you got someone who's just plain. Plain. Julian's eyebrows shot up. Nia, may I call you Nia? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Nia, I don't know what your uncle has told you about yourself, but you are nowhere near plain. You're... He paused, seeming to search for words. When I lifted that veil, I thought there had been some mistake, that they'd brought out the wrong woman. You're beautiful. There was that word again. Beautiful. It felt foreign on her tongue, impossible to believe. 24 years of Gerald's voice telling her otherwise couldn't be erased by one man's compliment, no matter how sincere he seemed. You don't have to say that, Nia murmured. We both know why we're really here. Julian's expression shifted. Something that might have been hurt flickering across his features before he schooled them back into neutrality. You're right. We should probably discuss that. But not here. He glanced around the crowded ballroom. After the reception, we can talk. Really talk. Before Nia could respond, Gerald appeared at their table, his smile wide and false. The happy couple. Julian, my boy, I trust everything is to your satisfaction. The way he emphasized satisfaction made Nia's skin crawl. Julian's hand found hers on the table, squeezing gently, a gesture of solidarity that shocked her. Actually, Gerald, I'm curious, Julian said, his voice pleasant but edged with steel. You told me Nia was scarred from an accident, that she was difficult to look at. Would you care to explain the discrepancy? Gerald's smile never wavered, but Nia saw the flash of anger in his eyes. Well, you know how these things are exaggerated. She was very self-conscious, and I thought it best to manage expectations. Better to be pleasantly surprised than disappointed, don't you think? Is that what you thought? Julian's voice dropped lower, and Nia felt the temperature at the table shift. This was a man used to boardrooms and hostile takeovers. She realized, a man who could wield power like a weapon when necessary. Or were you hoping I wouldn't look too closely? That I'd be too desperate for this merger to question anything? Julian. Because I am desperate, Julian continued, his hand still warm around Nia's. Hayes Industries is in trouble. I needed this alliance. But I'm not so desperate that I appreciate being lied to about my own wife. The word wife sent a strange shiver through Nia. She was someone's wife now. Julian's wife. It didn't feel real. Gerald's face had gone red. Now see here. No, you see here. Julian stood, pulling Nia up with him. My wife and I are going to dance. We'll discuss business matters later, when I'm in a better mood. And Gerald? He paused, meeting her uncle's eyes with a look that could have frozen fire. Don't lie to me again. Then he was leading Nia onto the dance floor, leaving Gerald sputtering at the table. The band had started playing a slow waltz, and couples were already swaying across the polished floor. Nia's heart hammered as Julian pulled her into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. I don't know how to dance, she whispered urgently. Gerald never. Just follow my lead, Julian said softly. I've got you. And somehow she believed him. They moved together slowly at first, Julian guiding her through the basic steps with patience. Nia was intensely aware of everywhere their bodies touched, his hand firm and warm at her waist, his shoulder solid beneath her palm, the way he smelled like expensive cologne and something else, something crisp and clean that made her want to lean closer. Thank you, she said after a moment, for what you said to Gerald. I should be thanking you, Julian replied, for agreeing to this arrangement. I know it can't be easy, marrying a stranger to save his company. It's not like I had much choice. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Julian's hand tightened at her waist, pulling her slightly closer. What do you mean? Nia hesitated. She never told anyone about the way Gerald treated her. Who would believe her? He was so charming in public, so generous with his money and his smiles. No one would believe that behind closed doors, he was cruel and controlling. But something about the way Julian was looking at her, really looking at her, like she mattered, made the words spill out. Gerald took me in when my parents died, she said quietly, her eyes fixed on Julian's shoulder. I was 6. He made sure I knew every day that I was a burden, that I was ugly, unwanted, Lucky he didn't throw me into foster care. He controlled everything. What I wore, where I went, who I could talk to. I wasn't allowed to work, to go to college, to have friends. This marriage was his way of finally getting rid of me. She felt Julian's body tense against hers. When she risked a glance at his face, his jaw was clenched tight, a muscle jumping in his cheek. "Nia," he said, his voice rough with emotion she couldn't identify. "That's abuse. What he did to you, that's abuse. He fed me, clothed me, kept a roof over my head." She was parroting Gerald's words. She realized 24 years of conditioning was hard to break. "That's the bare minimum of taking in a child," Julian said firmly, "and it doesn't give him the right to tear you down, to make you believe you're worthless." He stopped dancing, his hands framing her face, so she had to look at him. "You're not worthless. You're not ugly. And you deserved so much better than what he gave you." Tears burned in Nia's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Julian was looking at her now, like she was worth defending, worth protecting. "I don't know you," she whispered. "Why do you care?" Julian's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do. And I think we should try to make this work. Not just as a business arrangement, but as a real marriage, or at least as real as we can make it." "Why?" Nia couldn't understand it. "You could have anyone. You're rich, successful, handsome. Why would you want to be stuck with me?" Something painful flashed across Julian's face. "Because I'm lonely," he said simply. "My mother died 2 years ago, and since then, I've been going through the motions, building the company, making deals, attending parties where everyone wants something from me. I thought this marriage would just be one more business transaction. But then I saw you, and I thought maybe we could both use someone real." The honesty in his voice cracked something open in Nia's chest. Here was this powerful, wealthy man admitting to loneliness, to need. It made him suddenly, startlingly human. "I don't know how to be a wife," she confessed. "I don't know how to be anything except what Gerald made me." "Then we'll figure out together," Julian said. "No pressure, no expectations. We'll just see what happens. Deal." He held out his hand, formal despite the intimacy of the moment. Nia looked at it, strong, steady, offering her something she'd never had before. Choice. She took his hand. Deal. The reception dragged on for hours. There were toasts. Julian's best man, a childhood friend named Thomas, gave a heartfelt speech about Julian's integrity and dedication. Gerald gave a toast that dripped with false sentiment, talking about how happy he was to see his beloved niece settled with such a good man. Nia sat through it with a frozen smile, Julian's hand a constant, grounding presence on her knee under the table. They cut the cake, a towering creation of white fondant and sugar flowers. They posed for photographs until Nia's face hurt from smiling. They made small talk with endless streams of guests, most of whom looked at Nia with undisguised curiosity. "You're not what I expected," one older woman said, her eyes sharp with speculation. "Gerald made it sound like you were quite different." "Clearly Gerald has a talent for fiction," Julian interjected smoothly, his arm sliding around Nia's waist. "My wife is extraordinary. I'm a lucky man. My wife." Every time he said it, something warm bloomed in Nia's chest. By the time the reception finally ended, Nia was exhausted, emotionally drained from maintaining her composure, while internally reeling from everything that had happened. Julian had defended her, had called her beautiful, had suggested they try to make this marriage real. It felt like a dream, or maybe a trap. She didn't know which. A limousine took them from the hotel to Julian's penthouse in downtown Chicago. Nia stared out the window at the city lights, her wedding dress rustling with every breath. Julian sat beside her, his jacket discarded, his tie loosened. He looked tired, too, she realized, the weight of the day settling on both of them. "We should probably talk about logistics," Julian said as the car glided through the streets. "The penthouse has 3 bedrooms. You can have your own space if you want it. No pressure to share a bed or anything else. We'll take this at whatever pace feels right." Nia turned to look at him, surprised by his consideration. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding. Nia, I know this is a normal situation. I'm not going to pretend we're in love, or that this is some fairy tale. But I meant what I said earlier. I'd like us to try to be friends. At least, partners. You're stuck with me for the foreseeable future. We might as well make the best of it." The limousine pulled up to a sleek high-rise, all glass and steel and modern elegance. A doorman rushed to open their door, greeting Julian by name. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence, and when the doors opened, Nia stepped into a space that took her breath away. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white, artwork on the walls that probably cost more than most people's houses. It was beautiful and cold and looked nothing like a home. "It's not very warm," Julian admitted, as if reading her thoughts. "My mother always said I decorated like a hotel. You're welcome to change anything you'd like. Add some color. Make it feel less sterile." Nia thought about the tiny room she'd had at Gerald's house. Bare walls, a single bed, no personal touches allowed. The idea of being able to decorate, to choose things, was foreign and thrilling. "I wouldn't know where to start," she confessed. Julian smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him all day. It transformed his face, made him look younger, more approachable. "Then we'll figure out together. But not tonight. Tonight, you should rest. It's been a long day." He showed her one of the guest rooms, spacious and elegant, with an ensuite bathroom and a bed that looked like a cloud. Someone had already delivered her belongings from Gerald's house. Not that there was much. One suitcase of clothes, a box of books, and a portfolio case that held her art supplies. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall," Julian said from the doorway. "And Nia, I'm glad you're here. I know this isn't what either of us planned. But I'm glad." After he left, Nia sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, exactly, but from the overwhelming strangeness of it all. This morning she'd woken up as Gerald's unwanted niece. Tonight she was Julian Hayes' wife, sitting in a penthouse worth millions, being treated with more kindness than she'd known in 18 years. It was too much, too fast, too good to be true. And somewhere deep in her heart, Nia waited for the other shoe to drop, because good things didn't happen to girls like her. They never had before. But as she changed out of her wedding dress and slipped between sheets that felt like silk, Nia allowed herself one small, dangerous thought. What if this time is different? Nia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and forgot, for one disorienting moment, where she was. Then memory crashed over her. The wedding, Julian, the penthouse. She sat up quickly, heart racing, and checked the clock on the nightstand. 9:47 a.m. She never slept this late. Gerald had always demanded she be up by 6, ready to serve him breakfast. But Gerald wasn't here anymore. The realization was dizzying. Nia showered quickly in the marble bathroom, marveling at the rainfall showerhead and the array of expensive toiletries. She dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, casual clothes she'd rarely been allowed to wear at Gerald's house, and ventured out into the penthouse. The smell of coffee led her to the kitchen, where she found Julian standing at the counter in a fitted t-shirt and dark jeans, his hair slightly mussed. He looked different than yesterday, less polished, more human. He was scrolling through his phone with one hand, while holding a coffee mug in the other. "Good morning," Nia said softly. Julian looked up, and his face brightened. "Hey, I wasn't sure what time you'd be up. There's coffee, and I can make breakfast if you're hungry. Fair warning, though, my culinary skills are limited to toast and scrambled eggs." The casual domesticity of the moment felt surreal. "Coffee sounds good." Julian poured her a cup, remembering to ask how she took it. They sat at the kitchen island together, and Nia noticed Julian seemed nervous, his fingers drumming against his mug. "So," he began, "I've been thinking about our arrangement." Nia's stomach dropped. Here it came. The regret, the reality check, the revelation that yesterday's kindness had been temporary. "I have to go into the office tomorrow," Julian continued. "The merger with your uncle's company finalizes this week, and there's a lot to coordinate. But today is Sunday, and I thought, maybe we could use it to get to know each other? If you want. Oh. Relief flooded through her. Yes, I'd like that. Good. Julian's shoulders relaxed. I was thinking we could stay in, order food, just talk. Unless you'd rather go out? We could. No, Nia said quickly. The thought of facing the public, of being stared at and whispered about, made her anxious. Staying in sounds perfect. They ended up in Julian's living room, sitting on opposite ends of his massive sectional sofa. Julian had ordered Thai food, and they ate pad Thai straight from the containers while trading basic information like strangers on a first date, which, Nia supposed, they essentially were. Favorite color? Julian asked. Purple. The deep kind, like twilight. Nia paused. Gerald said it was too bold. He only let me wear beige or gray. Julian's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice light. Well, Gerald's not here. We're whatever colors you want. What about you? Blue. Ocean blue. Specifically. My mother used to take me to Cape Cod every summer. I love the water. Used to? Nia asked gently. Julian's expression shuddered. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. It was fast. By the time they caught it, there wasn't much they could do. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Nia meant them. She knew about loss, about the hole it left behind. Thank you. Julian was quiet for a moment. She would have liked you, I think. She always said I needed someone who could see past the money and the business. Someone real. I don't know how real I am, Nia admitted. I feel like I've been playing a part for so long. I forgot who I actually am underneath. Then maybe this is your chance to figure it out. They talked for hours. Julian told her about Hayes Industries, about the software company his grandfather had founded and his father had nearly destroyed before Julian took over at 25. He explained the financial troubles, bad investments, a market downturn, competitors who'd stolen key clients. Gerald's connections and capital were the lifeline that would save 800 jobs. Nia listened, fascinated by the passion in Julian's voice when he talked about his employees, about innovation, about building something meaningful. This wasn't just business to him. It was personal. What about you? Julian asked. What did you do before this? Nothing, really. Nia felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. Gerald didn't let me work or go to college. I mostly stayed home, read books, cleaned. She hesitated. I used to paint, though, before Gerald found out, and told me it was a waste of time. Julian leaned forward, interested. You're an artist? I was. Maybe. I don't know if a few paintings make you an artist. Do you still have your supplies? They're in my room. I brought them, but I probably won't. Paint something, Julian interrupted. Seriously, there's plenty of space here. Pick any room you want as a studio. Nia stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Nia, you live here now. This is your home, too. You should do things that make you happy. The concept was so foreign that Nia didn't know how to respond. Happy? When was the last time anyone had cared about her happiness? They spent the rest of the day in surprising ease. Julian showed her around the penthouse properly, pointing out which rooms she could claim as her own. They watched a movie, Nia's choice, which surprised her, and Julian ordered pizza for dinner. As evening fell, they found themselves back in the living room, the city lights twinkling below them. This is nice, Nia said softly. Easier than I expected. Julian smiled. Yeah, it is. He hesitated, then added, I know we're doing this backwards, marriage first, relationship maybe later. But I meant what I said yesterday. I'm glad you're here. Nia looked at this man she'd married, this stranger who was being kinder to her than anyone had in 18 years, and felt something shift in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. Me too, she whispered. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Nia woke to find a note slipped under her door in Julian's neat handwriting. Had to leave early for meetings. Make yourself at home. My number is programmed in the house phone if you need anything. Jay, make yourself at home. The words echoed in Nia's mind as she wandered through the empty penthouse. She'd never had a home, Not really. Her parent house was a distant memory of warmth and laughter. Gerald's house had been a prison. And this place, beautiful, expensive, cold, didn't feel like home either. It felt like a museum. Nia made coffee and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city move below. People rushing to work, living their lives, connected to the world in ways she'd never been. Gerald had isolated her so thoroughly that she had no friends, no job experience, no identity beyond burden and unwanted. Who was she supposed to be now? Her phone buzzed. A new iPhone Julian had given her yesterday, already programmed with his contact information. A text from him. How are you doing? Nia stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Fine? Overwhelmed? Terrified? She settled on, good. Hope your meetings go well. His response came quickly, boring but necessary. There's food in the fridge. Order anything you want if you're hungry. See you tonight. The casual care in his words made her throat tight. This was what normal looked like. She realized. This checking in, this consideration. She'd lived 24 years without it. Nia spent the morning exploring the penthouse more thoroughly. Julian had told her pick any room for a studio, and she found herself drawn to a space near the back, smaller than the others, with eastern exposure that would catch the morning light. The walls were bare white, the floor polished hardwood. It was perfect. She retrieved her art supplies from her room. The battered portfolio case she'd hidden from Gerald for years, smuggling in supplies with money she'd saved from birthday cards from distant relatives who didn't know how bad things were. Inside were sketch pads, pencils, a small set of acrylic paints, and a few brushes. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy, but they were hers. Nia sat up in the empty room, her hand shaking slightly as she opened a fresh sketch pad. How long had it been since she'd drawn anything? 6 months? A year? Gerald had found her last painting, a landscape of a place she'd imagined, somewhere beautiful and far away, and destroyed it in front of her, called it a waste of time, told her she had no talent. She picked up a pencil, let it hover over the blank page. What did she want to draw? Her hand moved almost of its own accord, sketching lines that became curves that became a face. Julian's face, she realized was start. She was drawing him from memory. The sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, the surprising gentleness in his expression when he looked at her. Nia lost herself in the work, the way she always had. Time dissolved. The world narrowed to pencil and paper, shadow and light. She didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear footsteps in the hallway. Nia! She jumped, the pencil skittering across the page. Julian stood in the doorway, his suit jacket slung over one arm, his tie loosened. He looked tired but curious. Sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to startle you. I called out when I came in, but you didn't answer. What time is it? Nia asked, disoriented. Almost 7. I would have been home earlier, but... Julian stopped, his eyes catching on the sketch pad in her lap. Is that me? Nia's face burned. I was just practicing. I can... That's incredible. Julian crossed the room, crouching beside her chair. Nia, that's really good. You captured. He trailed off, studying the drawing. You made me look kind. You are kind, Nia said simply. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a moment of connection that made Nia's pulse quicken. Julian cleared his throat, standing. Have you eaten? He asked. Not since breakfast. Me neither. Let me change, and we'll order something. You can tell me about your day. Over Chinese food, Nia found herself talking more than she had in years. She told Julian about finding the room, about drawing for the first time in months, about how terrifying and exhilarating it felt to have freedom. Julian listened intently, asking questions, encouraging her. I want to see more of your work, he said. Whatever you're comfortable sharing. There's not much. Gerald destroyed most of it. Julian's chopsticks clattered against his plate. He what? He said art was frivolous, that I should focus on being useful instead of wasting time on childish hobbies. Painting isn't childish, Julian said, his voice tight with anger. It's a gift, and he had no right to take that from you. Nia shrugged, uncomfortable with his intensity. It doesn't matter now. It does matter. Julian reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Everything he did to you matters. And I know I can't fix it, can't undo 24 years of damage, but I can give you space to heal, to rediscover who you are without him. Tears pricked Nia's eyes. Why are you being so nice to me? Because you deserve it, Julian said firmly. And because I'm starting to think this arrangement might be the best decision I've ever made. That night, as Nia lay in bed, she thought about Julian's words, about the sketch she'd drawn, about the way he looked at her like she was someone worth seeing. Maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to believe it too. The days began to blur together in a way that felt almost dreamlike. Julian left early for work each morning, and Nia spent her days painting the room that had become her studio. She painted landscapes from her imagination, rolling hills she'd never seen, oceans she'd never visited, forests thick with possibility. Each canvas was an escape, a world where she could be anyone, go anywhere. But it was the evenings she found herself looking forward to most. Julian would come home, tired from meetings and negotiations, and they'd share dinner together. Sometimes they ordered in. Sometimes Julian attempted to cook, which usually ended with them laughing over burnt chicken or over salted pasta. They talk about everything and nothing, books, movies, childhood memories. Julian told her about his mother's garden, about summer vacations in Cape Cod, about the pressure of taking over his family's company at 25. Nia told him smaller things, about the books she'd read in secret, about watching the world through windows, about dreams she'd barely allowed herself to have. What would you do? Julian asked one evening, 2 weeks into their marriage. They were sitting on the balcony, the Chicago skyline glittering before them. If you'd do anything, no limitations. Nia considered the question. I think I'd like to go to art school, learn properly, not just from library books and YouTube videos. Then do it. Julian, I don't even have a high school diploma. Gerald pulled me out of school when I was 16. Julian's face darkened. It always did when Gerald was mentioned. You could get your GED, then apply to art programs. I'll help with whatever you need. That's not. We barely know each other. You don't have to. Nia. Julian turned to face her fully, his expression serious. I know this started as a business arrangement, but we're married. We're building something here, aren't we? Friends, at least? Yes, Nia admitted softly. Friends. Then let me help you. Please. It would make me happy to see you pursue this. The sincerity in his voice made Nia's chest ache. She'd spent so long being told she was worthless, that her dreams didn't matter. Having someone believe in her was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Okay, she whispered. I'll think about it. Julian smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. The touch sent warmth spreading through her fingers, up her arm. They'd been married for 2 weeks, and physical contact was still rare between them. A hand on her back when Julian guided her through a doorway, fingers brushing when they passed dishes at dinner. Every touch felt significant, charged with possibility. I have something to show you, Julian said, standing. I've been waiting for the right moment. He led her through the penthouse to a door she'd never noticed before, tucked away near his bedroom. Julian pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked it, pushing the door open to reveal a staircase leading up. The penthouse has a second level, he explained. My mother used it as her studio when she visited. I haven't been up here since she died. They climbed the stairs together, and Nia gasped when they reached the top. The space was flooded with moonlight from a massive skylight, illuminating an artist studio that took her breath away. Easels, canvases, professional-grade paints, and brushes organized neatly on shelves. A potter's wheel in one corner. Sculptures in various stages of completion. Your mother was an artist? Nia breathed. A brilliant one. She studied at the Art Institute of Chicago before she married my father. After I was born, she gave it up to focus on family and charity work. But she never stopped creating. Julian's voice was thick with emotion. My father hated it. Called it a hobby. She'd come here to escape him, I think. Nia understood that need for escape intimately. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because I want you to have it. Julian met her eyes. The room downstairs is fine for now, but this is a real studio. Everything you'd need. It's just been sitting here, gathering dust. My mother would want someone to use it. Someone who understands what art means. Tears spilled down Nia's cheeks before she could stop them. Julian, I can't. This is too much. It's not enough, he said fiercely. After everything you've been through, it's not nearly enough. Please, Nia, let me give you this. She wanted to protest, to insist she didn't deserve such generosity. But standing in this beautiful space, surrounded by another artist's tools and dreams, Nia felt something shift inside her. Maybe she did deserve it. Maybe she deserved to take up space, to create, to matter. Thank you, she whispered. Julian stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. They were standing so close Nia could feel the heat of his body, see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. You're not alone anymore, he said softly. I know trust takes time. I know we're still figuring this out. But I need you to know you're not a burden. You never were. Gerald was wrong about you, about everything. Nia's breath caught. Julian was looking at her, the way she'd imagined people in love looked at each other, tender and fierce and certain. But they weren't in love. They barely knew each other, except she was starting to know him, the way he liked his coffee black, how he ran his hand through his hair when he was stressed, the sadness that crossed his face when he mentioned his mother, the way he defended her to Gerald, protected her, given her space to breathe. Julian, she started, not knowing what she wanted to say. He seemed to realize how close they were standing, how intimate the moment had become. He stepped back, clearing his throat. It's late, he said. We should get some rest. But as Nia lay in bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the look in Julian's eyes, the gentle touch of his hands on her face, the way her heart had raced when he stood close enough to kiss her. This was supposed to be a business arrangement. So, why did it feel like something more? 3 weeks into their marriage, Julian invited Nia to a company gala. You don't have to come if you're not comfortable, he said over breakfast. But it would mean a lot to have you there. People are curious about you, and I'd like to show them that the rumors about Gerald's hidden niece were all lies. Nia's stomach twisted with anxiety. I wouldn't know what to wear, how to act. These are all business people, and You're brilliant and kind to my wife, Julian interrupted gently. That's all you need to be. But seriously, no pressure. I'll understand if it's too much too soon. Nia thought about it throughout the day. Part of her wanted to hide, to stay in the safety of the penthouse where no one could judge her or whisper about her. But another part, a part that was growing stronger each day, wanted to stand beside Julian, to show Gerald and everyone else that she wasn't something to be ashamed of. I'll go, she told Julian that evening. But I might need help with the dress code. Julian's face lit up. I know just the person. The next day, a woman named Simone arrived at the penthouse, a personal stylist Julian had hired. She was warm and professional, and she brought what seemed like an entire boutique's worth of gowns. Nia tried on dress after dress, feeling like a little girl playing dress-up, until she stepped out in a deep purple gown that made Simone gasp. That's the one, Simone declared. Nia looked at herself in the mirror. The gown was elegant and sophisticated, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. The color, her favorite color, the one Gerald had forbidden, made her dark skin glow. She looked like someone else, someone confident, someone beautiful. Julian's going to lose his mind, Simone said with a knowing smile. The night of the gala, Nia's hands shook as she applied the minimal makeup she'd learned from YouTube tutorials. She'd styled her natural curls into an elegant updo, leaving a few tendrils loose to frame her face. When she finally emerged from her room, Julian was waiting in the living room, adjusting his cufflinks. He turned when he heard her heels on the hardwood and froze. Nia, he breathed, you look... Too much? She asked nervously, suddenly self-conscious. No, perfect. You look perfect. Julian crossed to her, his eyes never leaving her face. That color is incredible on you. It's my favorite, Nia admitted. I was never allowed to wear it before. Something fierce flashed in Julian's eyes. Well, You can wear whatever you want now. Though I have to warn you, every man at this gala is going to be jealous of me tonight. Nia's cheeks warmed. You clean up pretty well yourself. Julian did look devastating in his tailored tuxedo, his dark hair styled back, his strong jawline freshly shaven. They made, Nia thought with surprise, a striking couple. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, in a ballroom that rivaled their wedding venue in opulence. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, champagne flowing freely. As they entered, Nia felt every eye turn toward them. The whispers started immediately. Is that Julian Hayes' wife? She's gorgeous. What was Gerald talking about? I heard he married her sight unseen. Lucky man. Julian's hand found the small of her back, warm and reassuring. Ignore them, he murmured. You're doing great. They made their way through the crowd, Julian introducing her to business partners and colleagues. Nia smiled and shook hands and tried not to feel like an imposter. These people belonged here, in their expensive clothes and easy confidence. She was just Gerald's unwanted niece playing dress-up. Mrs. Hayes, it's lovely to meet you, said a silver-haired woman in diamonds. Julian's told us so much about you. He has? Nia glanced at Julian in surprise. He mentioned you're quite the artist, the woman continued. My daughter is studying at the Art Institute. Perhaps you two could connect. They talked for a few minutes about art, and Nia found herself relaxing slightly. When the woman moved on, Julian leaned close. See? You're a natural. I'm terrified, Nia admitted. Me too. I hate these things. Want to know a secret? Julian's lips quirked. We can leave whenever you want. Just say the word. The fact that he was willing to leave his own company's gala made something warm bloom in Nia's chest. They stayed, though. Julian kept her close as they mingled, his hand never leaving her back or waist. Nia found herself hyper-aware of every touch, every time he leaned down to whisper something in her ear. Was it her imagination, or were these touches lasting longer, growing more frequent? During dinner, Nia found herself seated next to Thomas, Julian's best man and CFO. He was friendly and funny, regaling her with stories about Julian's college days. He's different with you, Thomas observed quietly during a lull in conversation. Lighter. I haven't seen him like this since before his mother died. Nia started. I know it started as an arrangement, Thomas interrupted gently. Julian told me. But whatever it is now, it's good for him. And from the way he looks at you, I'd say it's becoming something more. Nia's heart raced. How does he look at me? Thomas smiled. Like you're the only person in the room. Later, during the dancing portion of the evening, Julian led Nia onto the floor. They moved together easily now. Weeks of practice in the penthouse had made them familiar with each other's rhythms. Are you having an okay time? Julian asked. Better than okay, Nia admitted. Thank you for bringing me, for believing I could do this. Nia, you could do anything. Julian's voice was low, intense. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I don't feel strong. You survived, Gerald, for 18 years. You're still kind, still hopeful, still creative despite everything he did to crush you. That's not just strong. That's extraordinary. Nia looked up at him, at this man who saw her in ways no one ever had, and felt something shift irrevocably in her chest. This wasn't just gratitude or friendship anymore. This was something deeper, more dangerous. This was the beginning of love. Nia was browsing the dessert table when she overheard the conversation that would change everything. Two men in expensive suits stood nearby, their voices low but not quite low enough. Nia recognized one of them, Robert Chun, a tech executive Julian had introduced her to earlier. Hayes is desperate, Chun was saying. This merger with Carter is his Hail Mary, but it's not enough. He needs something innovative, something that sets Hayes Industries apart from the competition. What about the education sector? The other man asked. Schools are throwing money at technology solutions right now. Adaptive learning software, data analytics for student performance. Hayes focuses on corporate clients. They'd never pivot fast enough to capture that market. Nia's mind began racing. She'd spent countless hours in Julian's home office over the past few weeks, reading through his company materials while he worked late. Hayes Industries had software that could easily be adapted for educational purposes. The data management systems, the user-friendly interfaces, the security protocols. She'd even sketched out ideas in her art journal, thinking about how the platforms could be modified for classroom use. She hadn't mentioned it to Julian. It seemed presumptuous, like she was overstepping. She knew nothing about business. After all, she was just the wife he'd married out of desperation. But what if she was wrong? What if she could help? Nia found Julian talking with a group of investors. When he saw her approaching, his face lit up in a way that made her stomach flutter. "Gentlemen, excuse me," he said, stepping away to meet her. "Everything okay? Can we talk? Privately?" Concern flashed across Julian's features. "Of course." He led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom, his hand warm on her elbow. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I overheard something, and I had an idea, but it might be stupid." "Nia." Julian's hands came to rest on her shoulders, steadying her. "Breathe. Tell me." So she did. Words tumbled out in a rush. The conversation she'd overheard, her observations about his software, the sketches she made exploring how his industries could expand into educational technology. Julian listened intently, his expression growing more focused with each sentence. "You've been thinking about this?" he asked when she finished. "About my company?" "I'm sorry, I know it's not my place." "Are you kidding?" "Nia, this is brilliant." Julian's eyes were bright with excitement. "The education sector is exploding right now, and you're right. Our existing platforms could be adapted with minimal restructuring. Why didn't I see this?" "You've been focused on the corporate side," Nia said. "But schools need the same things: data security, user management, scalable systems. And with the right partnerships, we could create an entire new revenue stream." Julian was practically vibrating with energy now. "Nia, do you have those sketches? The ones you mentioned?" "In my journal at home." "But Julian, I'm not a business person. This might not actually work. Or it might save the company." Julian pulled out his phone, already typing notes. "I need to call Thomas. Set up a meeting with the product development team. Can you put together a presentation of your ideas?" "A presentation?" Nia's anxiety spiked. "I've never—" Julian looked up, seeming to register her fear. His expression softened, and he pocketed his phone. "Hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is your idea. We move at whatever pace you're comfortable with." "I want to help," Nia said quietly. "I just don't know if I can." "You already have." Julian's hands found hers, squeezing gently. "Even if we don't pursue this, though I really think we should, you saw something I missed. You've been paying attention, thinking critically about solutions. That's incredibly valuable. I was just curious about what you do all day. Most people married to CEOs couldn't care less about the actual business." Julian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture so casual and intimate it made Nia's breath catch. "You're different. You see things, Nia. You matter." The sincerity in his voice undid something in Nia's chest. For so long, Gerald had told her she was worthless, that her thoughts and ideas didn't matter. But Julian looked at her like she'd just handed him the answer to every problem he'd been struggling with. "Okay," Nia said, gathering her courage. "I'll put something together. But you have to promise to tell me if it's terrible." "Deal." Julian grinned, then surprised her by pulling her into a hug. "Thank you for paying attention, for caring, for being exactly who you are." Nia melted into the embrace, breathing in his cologne, feeling the solid warmth of him against her. When they pulled apart, Julian's hands lingered on her waist, and the look in his eyes was something Nia couldn't quite define. Something heated and tender all at once. "We should get back to the party," he said, but he didn't move. "We should—" Nia agreed, but she didn't move either. They stood there, suspended in a moment that felt significant, like they were both waiting for something. Then someone called Julian's name, and the spell broke. They left the gala an hour later, Nia's feet aching in her heels. In the car, Julian couldn't stop talking about her idea. The potential partnerships, the market research they'd need, the timeline for development. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Nia found herself caught up in it, contributing thoughts and suggestions. "I can't believe I didn't think of this a month ago," Julian said as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse. "It's so obvious now." "Sometimes you're too close to see clearly," Nia offered. "You needed an outside perspective." "I needed you," Julian said simply. The elevator doors opened, but neither of them moved. Julian was looking at her with that expression again, the one that made Nia feel like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Julian," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "Tell me to stop." But Nia didn't want him to stop. She wanted this, wanted him, with a ferocity that terrified her. So instead of speaking, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, questioning. Julian's lips moved against hers with gentleness that made Nia's knees weak. Then his hand slid into her hair, the other pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that stole her breath and made the world spin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted, his voice rough. "Why didn't you?" Nia's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. "Because I didn't want to rush you. Didn't want you to feel pressured or obligated. This marriage started as a transaction, and I needed you to know that anything more, this was a choice. Your choice." Nia pulled back slightly to look at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes. "I choose this," she said firmly. "I choose you." Julian's answering smile was radiant. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. When the elevator doors started to close, he laughed and pulled her into the penthouse, their hands intertwined. They ended up on the couch, talking until 3 a.m, not about business or the past, but about the future, about what they wanted this marriage to become, about feelings that had been growing quietly between them for weeks. "I think I started falling for you at the wedding," Julian confessed, his fingers playing with hers. "When I lifted that veil and saw your face, not just that you were beautiful, but the fear in your eyes, the strength it took to stand there and go through with marrying a stranger. I wanted to protect you, to know you. I was terrified," Nia admitted. "I thought you'd be disappointed, that you'd realize Gerald was right about me being worthless. Gerald is a monster." Julian's voice hardened. "And I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again." They fell asleep on the couch together, Nia's head on Julian's chest, his arms wrapped around her. It was the first time Nia had felt truly safe in 18 years. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Nia worked obsessively on her presentation, turning her sketches and ideas into a comprehensive proposal. Julian connected her with his product development team. And to Nia's shock, they loved her concepts. They expanded on them, refined them, brought in market research that supported everything she'd suggested. "You have a natural instinct for this," Thomas told her during one meeting. "Have you ever considered business school?" Nia laughed. "I don't even have my GED yet." Yet, Julian said pointedly, he'd already enrolled her in a GED prep program, which she'd started the week before. "But that's temporary. Nia, you're smart. Really smart. Don't let Gerald's voice in your head tell you otherwise." The presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, a pitch to the board of directors and several potential educational partners. Nia was terrified. "What if I freeze up?" she asked Julian the night before. They were in bed together now, a development that had happened gradually over the past 2 weeks. No pressure, just closeness. Falling asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, and waking up the same way. "Then I'll step in," Julian assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "But you won't. You know this material better than anyone. You're going to be amazing. How can you have so much faith in me?" "Because I know you." Julian tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "I see who you really are, Nia. Not Gerald's version. Not the scared girl at the altar. The real you, brilliant, creative, resilient. That's who I fell in love with." Nia's breath caught. "You love me?" "So much it terrifies me," Julian admitted. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But yes, Nia, I love you." Tears spilled down Nia's cheeks. "I love you too. I was afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon, or that I was confusing gratitude with something else. But it's not gratitude. It's love. Real, terrifying, overwhelming love. Julian kissed her deeply, and they spent the rest of the night showing each other, without words, what they meant to each other. The presentation day arrived. Nia wore a professional dress in deep navy, a compromise between her purple and something more businesslike. Julian had hired a stylist to help her look the part, but Nia had insisted on keeping her natural hair, wearing her curls in a professional but authentic style. "You've got this," Julian whispered as they entered the boardroom. The room was full, 12 board members, 3 potential partners from educational institutions, and an entire executive team. Nia's hand shook as she connected her laptop to the projector, but Julian's presence behind her was steadying. She began to speak. At first, her voice trembled. She stumbled over a word, had to pause to collect herself. But then she looked at Julian, saw the pride and love in his eyes, and something clicked into place. This was her idea, her vision, and she knew it inside and out. Nia's voice grew stronger. She walked them through the market analysis, the proposed modifications to existing software, the potential partnerships with school districts and universities. She showed them the sketches she'd made, the user interface designs, the data on why the sector was exploding. She answered questions confidently. When one board member challenged her timeline, she explained her reasoning. When a potential partner asked about data security concerns, she addressed them with specific examples from Hayes Industries' existing protocols. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then Robertson, the executive she'd overheard at the gala, started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. "Mrs. Hayes," said the board chairman, a distinguished man named Frederick Walsh. "That was exceptional. I'd like to propose we move forward with this initiative immediately. And I'd like to offer you a position at Hayes Industries, Director of Educational Initiatives. If you're interested." Nia's mind went blank. A job? They were offering her a job? I don't have any formal qualifications," she stammered. "You have vision," Walsh said. "You have instinct. The rest can be learned. What do you say?" Nia looked at Julian. He was beaming, tears actually glistening in his eyes. He nodded encouragingly. "Yes," Nia said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I like that very much." That evening, Julian insisted on taking Nia to celebrate, but instead of a fancy restaurant, he brought her to his mother's art studio. Their art studio now. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her to a canvas covered with a sheet. He pulled the sheet away, and Nia gasped. It was a painting, clearly done by an amateur, but full of heart. It showed their wedding day, but reimagined, not the cold, formal ceremony with 200 strangers. Instead, it depicted them in a garden, surrounded by flowers and sunlight, looking at each other with love. The Nia in the painting wasn't wearing a veil. Her face was clearly visible, radiant with joy. "I've been working on it for weeks," Julian admitted. "My sister Bria helped. She's studying art at Northwestern. I wanted to capture what our wedding should have been, what I wish it had been." "Julian," Nia breathed, "it's beautiful. It's amateur at best," he said with self-deprecating humor. "But it comes from here." He pressed his hand to his heart. "Nia, I know we did this backwards. Marriage first, love later. But I want to do it right. I want to marry you again. Really marry you, with our friends and family, with vows we write ourselves, with joy instead of obligation." He pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. "Nia Carter Hayes, will you marry me again? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how extraordinary you are, how loved you are?" Nia was crying so hard she could barely see. "Yes, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Julian slipped a new ring onto her finger. Not the simple band from their arranged marriage, but an engagement ring with a purple stone surrounded by diamonds, her favorite color. He remembered. They held each other in that studio, surrounded by art and possibility, and Nia marveled at how her life had transformed. 2 months ago, she'd been Gerald's unwanted burden. Now she was Julian's partner, his love, a woman with a career and a future. and a man who saw her for exactly who she was. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," Julian murmured back. "My beautiful, brilliant wife." And for the first time in her life, Nia truly believed she was both of those things. The next 3 months were the happiest of Nia's life. She threw herself into her new role at Hayes Industries with a passion she'd never known she possessed. The educational initiative took off faster than anyone had anticipated. Within 6 weeks, they'd secured partnerships with 3 major school districts and 2 universities. The board was thrilled. Julian was proud. And Nia. Nia was discovering who she could be when someone believed in her. She also started her GED classes. Studying in the evenings while Julian worked beside her, both of them bent over their respective projects at the dining table. It felt domestic and real in a way that made Nia's heart swell. But there was still unfinished business. "I need to see him," Nia said one evening, looking up from her textbook. "Gerald, I need to confront him." Julian's jaw tightened. "Are you sure? You don't owe him anything." "I know, but I need to do this for me. I need to tell him that he was wrong about me, that I'm not worthless or ugly or unwanted. I need to take my power back." Julian studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but I'm coming with you. I wouldn't have it any other way." They arranged to meet Gerald at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Nia wore one of her new professional outfits, her natural hair styled confidently, her purple engagement ring catching the light. She looked successful, happy, loved. Everything Gerald had told her she'd never be. Gerald arrived looking older than she remembered, his face lined with stress. The merger had gone through, but Nia had heard through Julian that Gerald's shady business practices were being investigated. His empire was crumbling. He barely glanced at her as he sat down. "What do you want, Nia?" "I'm a busy man." "I want you to know that you were wrong," Nia said, her voice steady. "About everything. I'm not ugly. I'm not worthless. I'm not a burden." Gerald scoffed. "You got lucky." Hayes was desperate. "Julian loves me," Nia interrupted, "and I love him. But more importantly, I love myself now. I see my worth, and I want you to know that every cruel word you said to me, every time you made me feel small, it was a reflection of you, not me." "I gave you everything," Gerald spat. "I took you and when no one else wanted you." "You abused me," Nia said firmly. Julian's hand found hers under the table, squeezing. "For 18 years, you emotionally and psychologically abused a child who had lost everything. You made me believe I was nothing so you could control me. Well, I'm not nothing. I'm a director at Hayes Industries. I'm building programs that will help thousands of students. I'm an artist. I'm a wife to a man who cherishes me. I'm someone." Gerald's face had gone red. "You ungrateful." "We're done here," Julian said coldly, standing. Nia said what she needed to say. "And for the record, Gerald, the investigators looking into your business practices? I'm cooperating fully with them. Every shady deal you've made, every corner you've cut, it's all coming to light. You use my company to legitimize your fraud, and I won't let that stand." Gerald's eyes widened. "You can't." "I can, and I am." Julian's voice was ice. "You hurt the woman I love. You made her believe she was worthless for 2 decades. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" They left Gerald sitting there, his face ashen, his empire crumbling around him. Outside, Nia took a deep breath of fresh air and felt lighter than she had in years. "How do you feel?" Julian asked, his arm around her waist. "Free," Nia said simply. "I finally feel free." Planning the vow renewal was a joy Nia hadn't expected. Unlike their first wedding, every choice was theirs. They decided on an intimate ceremony in the penthouse's rooftop garden, a space Julian had transformed with Nia's input, filling it with purple flowers and twinkling lights. "Only people we actually care about," Julian insisted. "No business obligations. No society pressures. Just us and the people who matter." The guest list was small: Thomas and his wife, Julian's father Richard, who had flown in from California, Julian's younger sister Bria, home from Northwestern for the weekend, and a few close friends Nia had made through her work at Hayes Industries. People who had seen her grow from the scared woman at her first presentation to the confident professional she was becoming. The night before the ceremony, Nia was in the art studio working on a painting, a gift for Julian. It was a portrait of his mother, painted from photographs he'd shown her. Nia had tried to capture the warmth in Elizabeth Hayes's eyes, the strength in her smile, the woman who had created this beautiful space and raised a son who knew how to love. "That's remarkable," a voice said from the doorway. Nia turned to find Richard Hayes, standing there. Julian's father was tall and distinguished, with silver hair and the same blue-gray eyes as a son. He'd arrived that afternoon, and dinner had been slightly awkward. The relationship between Julian and his father was complicated, strained by years of Richard's absence after his wife's death. "Thank you," Nia said, setting down her brush. "I'm hoping to finish it before tomorrow." Richard stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the portrait. "You've captured her perfectly. The way she smiled when she was in this room. Creating, she was happiest here." "Julian talks about her a lot," Nia said softly. "She sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was." Richard's voice cracked. "And I failed her. After she died, I ran, threw myself into work, moved across the country, left my children to grieve alone. Julian had to take over the company at 25 because I couldn't face being here without her." Nia saw the pain in his face and made a decision. "You should tell him that. Julian, he needs to hear it." "I wouldn't know where to start." "Start with 'I'm sorry,'" Nia suggested gently. "Start with the truth. That's all any of us can do." The next evening, as the sun set over Chicago, Nia stood in the rooftop garden surrounded by flowers and fairy lights. She wore a dress she'd chosen herself, flowing purple silk that made her feel like a princess. Her natural curls were adorned with small white flowers. She felt beautiful. More importantly, she felt like herself. Julian stood at the makeshift altar in a dark suit, his eyes never leaving her as she walked toward him. There was no processional music, no formal march. Just Nia crossing the garden to the man she loved, her heart full to bursting. They'd written their own vows this time. Julian went first, his voice thick with emotion. "Nia, when I married you the first time, I thought I was making a business decision, a sacrifice to save my company. But you weren't a sacrifice. You were a gift. You walked into my life and changed everything. You reminded me how to hope, how to love, how to see beauty in unexpected places. You took your pain and turned it into strength, your darkness into light. And you let me be part of that transformation. I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life showing you how extraordinary you are, how loved you are, how thankful I am that fate brought you to me." Tears streamed down Nia's face as she began her own vows. "Julian, you saw me when I couldn't see myself. You believed in me when I didn't know how to believe. You gave me space to heal, to grow, to become whoever I wanted to be. You didn't try to fix me. You just loved me. And that love has been the most transformative gift of my life. I was so afraid at that first wedding, standing there in a veil, hiding who I was. But you lifted that veil, and you didn't just see my face. You saw my heart, my soul, everything I'd been told to hide. And you called it beautiful. I promise to love you fiercely, to be your partner in all things, to never stop growing beside you. Thank you for choosing me. Every single day, thank you for choosing me." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. They exchanged new rings, matching bands engraved with the date of their vow renewal, not their arranged marriage. A new beginning, a choice. When the officiant pronounced them married, again, Julian pulled Nia into a kiss that was tender and passionate and full of promise. Their guests erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception that followed, a casual dinner on the rooftop, Nia found herself pulled aside by Richard Hayes. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for what you said yesterday. I talked to Julian. Really talked to him. We have a long way to go, but it's a start. Because of you. I just told you what I wish someone had told me years ago." Nia said, "that it's never too late to try, to heal, to rebuild." Richard smiled, and for the first time, Nia could see Julian in his face. "My son is lucky to have you. We all are. Later, As the party wound down, Julian pulled Nia aside to the edge of the rooftop. The city sparkled below them, a canvas of lights and possibility. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Ridiculously happy," Nia admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That I'm here, with you, living this life." "Believe it," Julian murmured, kissing her temple. "This is real. You're real. We're real. And we're just getting started." Nia leaned back against him, watching the city lights twinkle like stars. She thought about the scared girl who'd stood at an altar 2 months ago, hidden behind a veil, believing she was unwanted and worthless. That girl felt like a stranger now. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, a woman who had a career she loved, art that fed her soul, and a partner who cherished every part of her, a woman who had confronted her abuser and reclaimed her power, a woman who was building a life on her own terms. "I have something for you," Julian said, pulling a folder from inside his jacket. "I was going to wait, but I can't. Open it." Nia opened the folder to find an acceptance letter from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. "Julian, what?" "You're starting classes in fall," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Part-time, so you can keep your position at Hayes Industries. But you're going to art school, Nia, like you wanted, like you deserve." Nia's hand shook as she held the letter. "How did you—" "I submitted your portfolio. The admissions committee loved it. They offered you a partial scholarship, and I'm covering the rest. No arguments," he added when she opened her mouth to protest. "This is happening. You're going to become the artist you were always meant to be." Nia threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Julian said, holding her close. "My beautiful, brilliant, extraordinary wife." Behind them, their friends and family celebrated. Bria was showing Thomas's wife photos on her phone. Richard was deep in conversation with one of Nia's colleagues, actually smiling. The rooftop garden was filled with laughter and love and the promise of tomorrow. Nia looked around at the life she'd built, the life they'd built together, and felt gratitude so profound it threatened to overwhelm her. She'd walked into a marriage expecting nothing but obligation. Instead, she found everything: love, purpose, family, herself. "Dance with me?" Julian asked, extending his hand. Nia took it without hesitation. They swayed together under the stars, the city lights twinkling around them like blessings. And as Julian held her close, Nia thought about how far she'd come. From the unwanted bride no one wanted to see, to a woman who had learned to see herself clearly. She'd been told she was ugly. She'd learned she was beautiful. She'd been told she was worthless. She'd learned she was invaluable. She'd been told no one would ever want her. She'd learned she was loved beyond measure. And she'd learned the most important lesson of all, that her worth had never depended on anyone else's perception. It had always been there, waiting for her to claim it. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked softly. Nia smiled against his chest. "Happy endings. New beginnings. How sometimes the best love stories start with the most unexpected first chapters." "Well," Julian said, tilting her face up to kiss her, "I can't wait to see what we write next." And as they danced under the stars, surrounded by love and light and infinite possibility, Nia knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way and had chosen, every single day, to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. The billionaire had married the bride no one wanted. And when he lifted her veil, he'd found not just a face, but a heart, a soul, a partner. He'd found love, and she had found herself.